Hey everybody, welcome to the Something Pretty podcast. My name is Wes, and I'm joined by the man who could knock a buzzard off a shit wagon. It's Clay. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. I was just waiting for the preliminary signal that you were going to show your ass.
Well, here it is. Get ready, everyone. The video podcast version of this one has me freely showing my ass to everybody who will take advantage of it. A lot of ass showing in this episode. A lot of people exposing the top, the bottom, and the whole thing. How are you? Good?
Yeah, good. Getting into the third season of Deadwood here, rounding out my Batman comic. Things are going pretty well.
That's good. Are you the fine man that I should take you for, or are you somebody else? Are you the drunk on the top of the platform, or are you somebody else that was more respectful?
I'm just one of the shit kickers in the background.
Yeah.
I'm the guy about to walk into the gem after two people have been murdered before Charlie stops me.
You don't want to go in there, partner. This is I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For. We're going to play a little bit of music, get that branding of the podcast out there, and then we'll come back and we'll break it down.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For. It's the second episode of the third season of Deadwood, directed by Dan Attias, I believe that's how you say it, written by David Milch and Regina Corrado. In this one, I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For, a drunk mounts the hustings in the thoroughfare to lament his luck in Deadwood. Cochran advises Alma that she needs intervention with her pregnancy. Hearst's man, Captain Turner, delivers a diagram to Swearingen. Johnny, Dan, and Swearingen puzzle out the drawing. It might represent the gem. Two miners order drinks in the gem. Swearingen, seeing a trap, slices one's throat. Dan kills the other. Alma prepares her affairs, naming Sophia her inheritor. Jane tells the schoolchildren of scouting for Custer. Johnny and Dan resume their interpretation of the paper, believing it predicted the scene in the gem. Hearst invites Swearingen to watch the speeches together. Trixie assists Cochran in Alma's abortion. Pharma and Starr make their speeches, followed by Harry Manning and Bullock. In Hearst's room, Turner holds Swearingen down. Hearst chops off his middle finger with a hatchet. So here we are with this one, second episode of Deadwood. Do you have any thoughts about how this season's different than the one we just got done with, the second season, or how it compares to the first season even? Talked about this a little bit in the first one, mostly focusing on like how it looked, but I'm wondering if you're sensing anything different in this one.
Do you believe the speeches will be delivered tonight?
The speeches, the elections, are hostage to the business of the camp, which is bloody, murderous. And you know, I don't like this tea.
Too cool?
It's too weak.
I do not make weak tea.
I oughtn't to tease. I like mine unusually strong.
You might have said, Seth, it's an easy thing to fix.
You're right.
I'm not a mind reader.
I've said it now.
My goodness.
Well, it does continue to feel a little bit more like the first season in that I feel like they've kind of dialed the violence back up a bit.
Yeah. It's more
but,
active,
you know,
I feel. Like
it's
the violence is kind of
active.
an active outcome, or the violence is an outcome of becoming more active with your plots, I think.
Yeah. You know, I know we're only 3 episodes in, but...
2.
So 2? Really? Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 episodes in. But I'm not quite sure. I feel like, strangely enough, season 2 was really focused in where it was going.
Yep.
And this one, I'm not totally sure if it has that focus yet.
Okay.
Because it has a lot of disparate elements, story elements, and they have the centralized thing of Hearst, but I don't know. I mean, it's too early to really tell.
Yeah. They're still building, because I guess by this time in the second season we just finished up the 2-parter, which was not super. It wasn't super insightful into where the second season went by that point. Right. So it is kind of a slow burn to get anywhere. But yeah, I would agree that I think I think the third season so far does feel a little bit more sort of scattered in what it's doing. I feel like the characters kind of all off in their own universes in a lot of ways, and some of them don't interact with each other the way that they used to in the second season. And I think that the Silas has a quote in this episode about like, I feel like I've been shunted to the side because he's off doing the business with Star, and it kind of feels that way with some of the characters. I think who I don't know if that's Milch being meta about some of the characters that he can't keep around, and like how many characters there are and whether or not he can service all of them. But it is where we stand.
Yeah. I don't know how many more episodes they can get out of Joni just looking kind of distraught.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
That seems to be the only thing that she's doing at the moment, and I don't know how long they can do that without doing something interesting with her.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For, which is I like this one just because this is a great example, I think, of the show balancing the serious and the silly at the same time. I think this is an extremely funny episode. There's like a lot of jokes in it.
This has I think maybe my hands down favorite scene of the series so far.
Can I guess what it is?
Please do.
Which will possibly be insightful into mine. But I always die with laughter when Cochran and Trixie are trying to perform the abortion and they start screaming at each other.
That's very good.
Turn your head away from the cloth and breathe.
Shut the fuck up and concentrate.
Turn your head away, God damn it.
What I'm used to? This is like smelling fucking posy.
I would just assume that you not fucking pass out.
When you're done with hers, Doc, why don't you fucking kiss mine?
he's like, I don't need you fucking passing out while we're doing this. Ellsworth is like outside on the porch listening to them yell at each other.
Especially because the thing that directly precedes that is him saying, you're ready to do exactly what I tell you. And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. And the first thing he tells her to do, she doesn't do it.
I even like the way it ends where they both stop yelling and they get down to business, and like Doc Cochran is like very focused on the procedure that's in front of him. But I think Dorff has a great yelling voice. He's like a great yeller actor, and that's very funny. Was that yours, or were you thinking of something else?
No, it's when Andy Crane goes in to see Cy, and Cy starts doing this whole bullshit I've seen the light revival thing while waving a gun in his face.
Yes, yeah.
And it's clearly something he had planned to do, and then people just keep coming in and fucking it up.
Botching their entrances, yeah. And eventually that's what's so funny about it is that the botching of the stuff almost convinces him that he's not going to kill him because it's so fucked up that he can't actually kill Andy Crane.
He's like, it's not even worth it at this point. But it's just like, because it's such a great Cy, like it's a great Cy performance there on two levels. It's a great Powers Booth performance, but it's a great Cy performance as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of in the vein of when he was drinking the champagne and sending the whores on their way to go with Joni.
Yeah.
But it's just the way that they keep coming in and keep screwing it up, and then eventually he's just kind of like, fuck it, and then
and Crane is even just like, I'm just going to see myself out and just leave.
Unbelievable,
the room. Yeah.
Fantastic, very, very good.
Therefore I say to you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven, except blasphemy against the Spirit.
Couldn't Matthew be speaking at me there? Oh, Christ fucking-mighty, I'm so glad to fucking see you, Andy, with forgiveness in your fucking heart. Where is this strength coming from now? Where is this strength coming from that I feel flowing into me, that lets me sit up and try to fucking touch you, Andy? If only you'll fucking let me. Fuck me. Fucking Jesus Christ almighty. Can you feel what's fucking moving here? It's moving in the room right now. Only you'd hold me. I believe I could walk.
Con said now may be when you asked to be told about.
Jesus Christ, you're well arrived. Would you have Dope's cross off your shoulders, son?
I know I'd like to take less.
Then fall to your fucking knees. Get to your motherfucking knees, Leon, and ask the Lord to lift your burden part way.
Hear me? Lord?
Don't fuck with the fucking deity, Leon. You got to come to him wholehearted, even when you're asking for partial relief.
Si's in recovery, obviously, so he's been sort of he can't move around, so he's resigned himself to just trying to guilt trip people who come to visit him, and like that's his entire state of being. Although Joni in this one says that he sounds like the devil when he speaks, that she sort of recognizes that she's known it for a long time that he's not particularly good for her, but she doesn't have anything else to do, which is leading to her sort of state of being where she's attempting or thinking about committing suicide inside.
Thinking about possibly looking into, considering the possibility of maybe committing suicide.
Maybe committing suicide. You have to rent the place from Shaughnessy. We don't get any Shaughnessy in this episode, unfortunately, and I like that character, but he will return. Yeah, so Si's on the down and out. The funniness about it is, I think it's an episode that obviously pairs a very serious issue, which is the power struggle between Hearst and Al, which is like, sort of comically put up against the elections that are supposed to be happening. Like there's this song and dance about the things that are supposed to matter in this democracy and this extension of America and things, but the real power struggle is being held like literally above the crowd on the rooftops of everything. And so I like that, but I think that it's a super funny, silly episode that has a lot. I felt like more jokes than normal, and I just thought that it paired nicely with the serious, the storyline in which Al is actually physically beaten for the first time that we've ever seen. He's sort of been bested. He's both physically beaten in the sense of getting a hatchet to his hand, and also beaten in the sense that he didn't see this coming and couldn't protect himself from it. So. But some of the jokes are like, I just have a little list here of like when Dan and Johnny are getting rid of the corpses of the murderers and one of the corpses farts at the end of their scene. Charlie has a line when he sees Hearst in the restaurant of the hotel. He says 2 of his men throat cut and he picks the fucking fish, which I think is funny. EB is now officially just kind of a weird Shakespearean clown character, which is fun. I think he's very funny, but he's like living in the walls of the hotel talking to Richardson. He has that great thing where he gives his fake speech of like electors of the camp, who should serve as mayor. Reasonable men might differ, but turn out the maniac Bullock who beat the mayor with merciless protraction. We should rise up and murder Bullock. It just has a lot of funny things.
And a very well-structured anti-Semitic speech for why he should stay mayor.
Yeah, it was like a pro-Trump, proto-Trump thing, but they didn't predict that no one would actually respond to it, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like his what does he say? Farnham measured twice once
measured,
cut.
star once cut. Yes.
A clear choice for Deadwood. Farnham, twice measured. Star, once cut. E.B. Farnham, essayed and proven true. Farnham, Christ knows he's earned it.
Christ knows I deserve this. Yeah, and the last subtle Charlie thing was that I like this runner about Charlie runs a freight and mail business, and he clearly hates the business.
Yes.
And so when Bullock walks into him organizing his mail, Charlie he's like sorting through these gigantic piles of mail and packages, and he just goes, "Have people tried keeping their fucking thoughts to themselves?" So it's an episode that's filled with silly moments like that, but also paired nicely with the more serious stuff that's going on up above.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised at the scene where they kill the two guys at the bar.
Yeah,
because I thought what they were doing, I thought that they were running through like a mock situation.
Oh, okay.
Because they play it so kind of jokingly, where it's like they've got exactly 4 people set up the way that it's shown in the drawing, and Al's being very cavalier and kind of jokey about how he's responding. Yeah, so I thought what they had done is I thought they had shut the bar down for 15 minutes so they could run through possibilities of what this might entail. I was not expecting them to actually be killing 2 people.
Oh, so you didn't recognize the 2 guys at the bar from the first episode?
I didn't recognize the first guy, but the second guy I recognized.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, they return for that one. But yeah, what did you it's one of that plot line is kind of like one of these Deadwood things where I feel it makes sense, and it possibly makes more sense than I understand it too if someone were to like explain it to me. But it's one of those things of like I think we've talked about it before. I think it was Gerald McRaney, the actor who plays her, said that like Milch's writing reminds him of Faulkner, and that like in the moment some things don't seem to make sense, but when you take a look at the whole, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel that way about the what Hearst is giving to Al there, like Hearst's attempt to make Al feel salved or whatever the expression that they use to make him feel that he's being respected again. Why he has to offer up his henchmen to him to do that, and whether or not that's what Hearst wanted to happen in the long go. Like it feels like it's a long way to go, and you lose some of your valuable. I guess to Hearst it doesn't really matter, but like losing some of your men would seem like it's something that you should be more careful of. But I guess maybe that's what Hearst is saying, that he doesn't really care. I guess I'm just wondering what you thought about that the back and forth between Al and Hearst in terms of like the sort of arrangement that they come to with each other, where they agree to finally meet at the end, like whether or not the build up there made any sense or what you thought about it.
I was not really following it. What I took away from it was that Al was starting to get paranoid because he wasn't sure exactly what was meant by the letter or anything else. So they were starting to dial up his paranoia.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I couldn't track if the 2 guys were there in the bar, what were they there to kill Al?
Yes. So that seems to be one. So my understanding is that Hearst did this with the intention that if Al did not see through what was going to happen, Hearst wins in that situation, right?
Sure.
He's trying to. He's kind of playing a mind game, sussing out his opponent by giving Al the note to see if Al can understand what the note is going to mean to them. Mm-hmm. And so that's my understanding there. And I think Dan and Johnny talk about it later, which is that.
I thought it was a football defense.
Yeah, it does have some John Madden 64 graphical component to it. Dan and Johnny talk later on about like that was Hearst showing his ass, and that was Swearingen showing his ass, but it's just I guess it is what I was saying before. It's that Hearst has the resources to be able to throw away things like this and to see if he can either beat Swearingen outright, or if not, just kind of suss out what kind of opponent he's facing, and he doesn't mind losing some henchmen in the process. But they don't get too specific about it. It's more like it happens, and it's kind of it leads into this larger idea, and I guess I'm curious if you saw this, about like Hearst's plan is to ultimately make Al more comfortable than he should be when he goes to visit him at the second part, to sort of like give him this false sense of confidence that he's figured this out, and for the audience to be watching the show go like, oh, Al figured out what the plan was, so that Al's like now in control of the situation, and it turns out to be not the case at all by the end of the episode.
I wasn't tracking that so much, but I liked the way Al was breaking down the different moves and how he kind of gets to the point where he knows what he can and can't do. So like he knows that if he's going to meet Hearst, that he can't bring somebody with him because that would be suspicious, but his guy can be there because it makes sense that his guy would be there.
Yeah.
Like I was tracking that stuff, but I wasn't really getting the sense that Hearst was trying to make him feel like he'd figured, because I never got the sense from Al that he felt like he had the upper hand, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Even like, I guess that I'm remembering now, it's that Dan and Johnny talk about how like the two at the bar, the two guys who were sitting that Hearst sent, were there to make the two guys at the bar feel comfortable enough that they didn't have to pull their weapons immediately. That's what Dan sort of suggests is going on. And that gives Al time to respond to the threat that comes at him and allows the other two to escape. And, you know, he tells them not to shoot him and he allows them to run back to Hearst. It's not exactly clear. I think it's one of those things that I like about the show is that like I take it for what its like larger point kind of means. And I feel like you have to do this a lot with the show. And this is just kind of the latest example, is that like it washes over you, but the details themselves are a little bit hazy. And, you know, I think the show is aware of this too, because a lot of the times the characters on the show are talking to each other about what is going on and no one is particularly sure. You know, like the Dan and Johnny scene is to ostensibly help the audience understand, but even the characters who were there for the thing don't really understand what has gone on or why it's happened. And the best they can do is guess at it.
All right. Now, Hearst sent these two. The two you had to drop on.
That didn't draw.
Yeah, he sent the two that didn't draw so that these two wouldn't be so quick to the irons.
These two that you and Al murdered.
Correct, these two. Now, see, that give me and Al time to cut their throats. Now that was Hearst showing Al his ass.
And sending this diagram ahead was him signaling Al his intention.
Well, it was his preliminary signal that he was going to show his ass, if Al was smart enough to know it. Otherwise, if Al didn't know it was coming, he'd have been surprised when those two didn't back these two's play.
Well, thinking that Al would throw his hands up surprise shows that Hearst ain't too smart.
Yeah, he's smart, Johnny. I mean, they both, him and Al, real fucking smart.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of what I really liked about that scene, is after it happens, no one's really sure exactly what just went on.
Yeah, yeah. And they follow Al out the door. So, Adam says like ducklings or whatever, which is funny. But yeah, it's a larger part of the power play between Hearst and Swearingen at this point, which is in the first episode they had implied that there was going to be this power struggle, but now it's more obvious about it. I like the use of Hearst uses a little mining hammer basically as a weapon, where Al uses a knife. It's a nice bit of characterization for the two of them. And Hearst is also continuing to blow holes in the hotel, and he makes a copy of Al's balcony, but he just does it by putting a sledgehammer through the wall, and he walks out onto the roof. So
his veranda, you mean?
His veranda, yes, that's right. It was written in a what does Dan say? It was written in a silly hand or something like that, but it is a veranda. Any thoughts about the Hearst and Swearingen thing? It's the backbone of the episode. I don't know if it's exactly what the title is referencing, but did you have any thoughts about this one, where this is going?
I'm looking forward to the next step for Hearst, because I feel like there's been, across the 2 seasons, 3 kind of big scenes with him, and they're all kind of a little bit the same to me at this point. And so I'm hoping that it continues to move forward, because I like him. I like him as a character, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of his scenes feel a little samey at this point.
Yep. Well, I guess what do they do in the scene? He threatens somebody?
Yeah, he kind of threatens somebody, and then he's like, I'm all about gold, and it just has a lot of the same energy. And I'm not. I guess his single-mindedness is making it seem a little samey to me.
Yep.
But I did really like that final scene with him and Al. But yeah, I'm curious to see where he goes next and what they do with him. Because there's only so many people he can chop fingers off of.
Yeah. I like Hearst because of his single-mindedness, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the single-mindedness that I have a problem with. It's just that, I don't know. I want to see more from him as far as like what they have him do and the way that they write him, I guess. And because I think it's just some of his dialogue scenes are starting to feel kind of similar.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think there was a general sense of in the Deadwood Bible, there was a sense of some of the writers who had left that they thought that there were a few too many scenes about Hearst pontificating, which we haven't really got into. But I disagree just because I enjoy his pontificating. I think that he's kind of interesting.
I don't think it's bad. I'm just curious to see them do something new with him.
Right. Where else the character can go. I mean, I feel like this season is in a lot of ways more theatrical than the prior two seasons.
Sure.
I feel that like, there's a little bit more like, I don't know what you call it. You'd call it like allegory or this like theater aspect where sort of like the rational thing that could be done is not done. And it's done. It's sort of like, I guess the easiest way to describe it is the way that Hearst carries himself, right? In that he like stands up on the roof overlooking the town that he's a threat to, and no one shoots him. You know, like there's a surreal unreality to the fact of like how powerful he is. Doesn't make sense in a kind of real world context, but it makes sense in terms of like the narrative that goes around him. I find him to be very theatrical in that sense of like sitting in the broken down hotel that he's like smashed all the holes into, and like him standing on the roof and no one cares. He doesn't have like an army backing him, you know? He's just a guy who has this Captain Turner person who's one man. So it's like you'd think that the town could easily recover from him, but the show is taking a sort of like more metaphorical stance, I guess, about like what Hearst represents as opposed to what Hearst is as a person. And I like that a little bit. It's it allows for like the conversations that the show excels in to be front and center, and it doesn't rely on like fisticuffs. You know, in like the beating of Al and Seth and stuff like that. It's a little bit more, I guess it's idea driven more than anything else. So you have to, that's something I'm finding I have to kind of like let go in the third season, is that it's not like a real narrative structure that's based in reality as much as it's just kind of a bunch of ideas coming at each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I did think that the one thing that surprised me was that I feel like traditionally Al wouldn't have let himself be in that situation, because especially if it's a clear line of sight from the veranda to his balcony, I'm surprised that he didn't tell one of his guys to, you know, have a gun ready just in case that he pulled something, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, I do. I think that's all an interesting way to handle this stuff. Because it does make things more. I think it makes things more interesting, but it also takes you do have to kind of adjust the way that you're taking it in, I think.
Yeah.
Your bosom must swell with pride, Mr. Swearingen.
Swellings and saggings to the tit I lay at the exactions of time.
I mean, you worked to bring this evening about. Labor without pleasure makes us our destiny's slaves.
To work for crumbs or to keep from the lash says maybe a slave's what you are.
And they do not that there's not a internal plot logic to why things can happen. Like Bullock can't arrest Hearst at the end, right? Because that's not the for once Seth actually listens to Al and doesn't do the bad idea, which would be to go up and arrest Hearst for what he'd seen.
Arrest if he's lucky.
Right. Yes. Yeah, well,
he might have just gone in there and fucking killed him.
so Bullock can't do anything directly to him, and so they do have a little bit of like narrative logic as to why that would be the case. But it's still, the scene ends with Bullock just walking through the thoroughfare as Hearst is standing with his hands in his pockets, looking down on the town. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I like about Hearst, is that Hearst is not a real person. Hearst is like an empty concept of a person.
Sure.
Milch describes him as he's so into the abstraction of gold and wealth that he no longer sees anything as valuable, because he's so much into the sort of like, this rock means something to me, that he doesn't think anything of killing people at that point, because he's given himself over to this abstraction about what wealth is and what power is.
It does surprise me a little bit, though, that they aren't just like, how about we just fucking kill this guy? Like, like what's in the world of the show, I feel like the town conspiring to kill Hearst is not beyond the pale,
Yeah. I guess you have to assume that Hearst has, if you're looking for the reality of it, is that like Hearst knows and has it set up that if Hearst is taken out of the situation or something bad happens to him, then it'll just be like hellfire and brimstone for the town.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has voiced that, but that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm a little surprised that they haven't had someone just suggest it so they could get it out of the way.
Yeah.
And instead of like having it be something that's like, well, why? Clearly this guy is a threat to everybody. It's not like he himself is bringing anything specific of value to the town. It's not like if they kill him, they cut off a big supply of like goods or money or something,
Right. He's not backing the town in any sense,
right,
or bringing anything in.
Yeah, and I feel like Seth Bullock would not be above turning the other way for a minute to get rid of this fucking guy.
Yeah.
But but I'm a little surprised that they haven't had someone like Johnny or something bring it up and have Al slap it down.
Yep.
But I also understand that in the way that they are presenting him as this overwhelming, looming force that can't be just defeated easily.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the way you have to interpret it. Is that it's just that he, in the metaphor of the town, he represents the change that is potentially coming. He represents sort of large capital who could come in and simply buy up or make things difficult, or be the backbone of like corruption that everyone is scared about. Alma in her sort of meeting with Bullock in this one talks about the fact that her ex-husband's family might use Hearst's money as a way to come after her claim and Sophia's claim.
Yeah.
And so I think that they don't care about Hearst the person, but it's just the idea that there is larger forces out there looming that are ready to take everything that the camp has built to this point. And, Al it's the most overt Al has actually gotten with his sort of like good guy split in it. And it's that like he has some lines with Hearst up when he's up on the veranda watching the speeches about that are fairly, unsubtle. It's just like purposes butt up against each other. What the strong call consolidation, I call bending the weak to their will. So Al has his most like righteousness angle with Hearst too. He sort of comes out of nowhere with this idea that like, because it's not even grounded in a sense of self-preservation. Al seems much more interested in the town at this point, and it's not even about just like losing the gem or anything. It's not a selfish desire to take one over on Hearst. He had that conversation with Bullock in the last episode about like this cocksucker thinks he can take everything, and it's not that he says it's not fair, but it's out of proportion is what Al calls it. So Al has he's at his most righteous, I think, in these moments, because it doesn't come across as duplicitous to me what Al's saying.
No, yeah, and I think that's the most interesting change for him over the season so far, is that his drive is clearly the town moving forward over anything else.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's still in it for personal reasons, but I feel like even his personal reasons are backed by the idea of the town progressing.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. What do you think of think of the elections that are being prepared for here?
The one thing that I didn't like about the episode, I didn't like cutting back and forth from the speeches to Al and Hearst.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't think, I couldn't figure out why they were doing it, like, because I didn't feel like it was building any tension, really.
Yep.
Because like the tension of I felt like the speeches being so weird and kind of disjointed and jagged kind of undercut the tension that they were building with Al and Hearst.
Yep.
And so I'm kind of curious as why they decided to do that, because like I would have much preferred that they do the speeches in a minute and a half and then give you just the whole scene with Al and Hearst. But you know, whatever. Yeah, I liked the speeches. I really liked the guy from the number 10, whatever his name is.
Yeah, who's running for sheriff? Harry.
Yes,
I think his name's
I really
Harry.
liked that guy's speech. I liked Seth's speech, which just had nothing to do with anything.
For Saul. Yeah.
But I liked the other guy's speech, Harry's speech as well, because he was like, well, I think we should have a fire brigade, and I'd like to do it because I've always liked fires. I really liked that. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah, I think I think the reason that they intercut them is that there is one of the, I think Steppenwolf's review calls Deadwood a show of extremes, and I think that's accurate. The way that I interpret this is that there is a kind of love from the writers and production staff about like the way that civilization moves into a community. Basically, like I think Milch has a real respect for like the community and like the culture and the society that is created in places. Mm-hmm. But he's pretty critical of he's kind of David Simon-esque in that he's critical of like the institutions that form around the core of what the communal spirit is in some ways. Like, so he, because Swearingen and Merrick in this one have a scene where it's really just Al saying that like the press is corrupt and it's like you don't need to know any, like you're selfishly wanting to know information to tell each other, and you think you're serving this higher purpose of being like the fourth estate when you're really just a guy with a printing press, And
Right.
I think that the elections serve the same thing. Is like elections are very important in like a cornerstone of our democratic society, but the elections here are like comically bad,
Mm-hmm.
while the real power brokers are what I said earlier, which is that it's the conversation between Al and Hearst is what the real conversation is being held. And the elections down below are just like, they have to stop asking the crowd to stop asking about people shitting in the river. It's like, there's no, the disconnect of seriousness is intentional, I think, which is that like we're all playing games down below while the real things are being decided in the back room. And that's the way that I view it anyway.
These last months have made me expert. It was gunfire, and it came from your saloon.
Has not the press a duty, Merrick, qualifying its accounts in time of war?
Are we at war now, here in the camp? Has that fact been suppressed as well? Absent formal declaration, Al. Information which affects this community is not my prerogative to disseminate. To do so is my sacred responsibility.
Whores currently disseminating a dose, for example.
To inform within decency's limits. We've had this discussion before.
Citizens better die postulating than touch indecent ink.
Make a list of the infected whores and account for this morning's gunfire, and I'll publish it all.
I won't, fucking Merrick, because neither's to my fucking interest. Just as you owning a print press proves only you've an interest in the truth, meaning up to a fucking point. Slightly more than us others may be, but short of a fucking anointing or the shouldering of a sacred burden. Unless, of course, the print press was gift of an angel, I'd want to be there for that handoff myself. Maybe you should print an extra saying the speeches are on again.
Tonight.
What time do you think would be best?
Yeah, I think you're right. It was a surprising I think it took me off guard because when they do that on the show, I feel like they tend to do it as a way to have a tension building thing, whether it's the killing of Wild Bill or the bike
or the wedding
parade
and the
or
last,
the wedding.
Yeah.
They tend to do it in a way that's very tension building, and so I was kind of surprised. Like I was primed for that, and to get this thing that felt like it just kept killing the tension.
Yep.
Was surprising, but I think you're right. I think that is exactly why they're doing it, because it is the elections they're having outside are stupid and silly, and the people who are making the real decisions are Al and Hearst.
So I guess I have two questions for you. Did you see the Hearst attack coming and the ending attack? And if you, I guess that's the first question. So did you see that coming? Did you think that Al was in danger going into that sequence? And I guess I'll go off that. So did you see what was coming towards the end? And did you think that you said that the cutting didn't help you, but I find that ending scene very tense, although I knew what was coming. And the cutting back and forth almost makes me a little bit more nervous because you're waiting for the moment to happen with Al. But did you see the sort of double cross coming, if you want to call it a double cross?
I guess not.
Because the Sappenwall review is pretty strong on the fact of, let me see if I can find it. This is an episode that gets a lot of laughs out of Al's goons trying to figure out what the note means and why Hearst would send it, and from the general chaos caused by the event, like Charlie's reaction to seeing the gem carnage. But it's also setting us up to be sucker punched in the same way Al is in the final scene. Because we're so used to Al being so much smarter than both his underlings and his enemies, we're reassured that he deciphers the implications of the note, that he knows, for instance, to only kill Ball Blackthorne and his partner and not the other two gunmen. And because he seems so confident in going alone to watch the speeches from Hearst's veranda, the idea that it's a setup seems completely improbable to the viewer.
Yeah, I don't think I thought it was improbable.
Yep.
But I definitely was not expecting him to get his fingers cut off.
Yep.
Yeah. But when what's his name pulled a gun on him, that didn't surprise me at all.
Well, yeah, when Turner pulls the gun on him.
Yeah. I guess I was more surprised by what exactly happens at the end, but I wasn't surprised that Turner pulled a gun on him.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I was more surprised that Al didn't have a contingency in place.
Right, yes, which I guess is the Sappenwall point, right? That he's gone in thinking that he has control of the situation. As you say, the most they talk about is whether or not Dan can go with him, and they decide that Dan can't go with him because it wouldn't be reasonable for him to bring him.
I think he didn't explore all of his options, because as I was watching it, I was like, Al, just drop to the ground and roll off the top of the thing. You'll be fine.
Hearst says something about that. He asks him, "Do you think you're adept enough to escape the situation or something?" But yeah, I was thinking just dive off there into the crowd and start moshing your way back to the gem.
Accepting your premise, Mr. Swearingen, I'll not name how you would benefit from the action I wish you to take, saying only instead, it's my will, to which I will have you bend. I suggest you drink that.
No.
I would incorporate into my holdings the claim now owned by Mrs. Ellsworth. I am told that you can help me bring this about. Tell me how you will help. This is a grip I'm used to.
As far as making your way into her, act averse to nasty language and partial to fruity tea.
I did the Seppenwall mentioned the actor in that thing you read, but I couldn't place. I knew one of the guys who got murdered, but I couldn't place his face. but I looked him up. It's Paul Blackthorne. He was he was one of the main characters on Arrow, the Green Arrow show for like 6 or 7 years or whatever. It was just one of those faces where I'm like, I know this guy, but I don't know what I know him from.
No, interesting. I thought that was I thought Paul Blackthorne was the character's name, but I guess
nope, that's the actor.
That's the actor's name. Yeah. So I mean, I guess we talked about the Hearst sequence enough. I like Al's recovery there. I like it gives Cy an opportunity to be a real Cy Tolliver thing, where he's like, he has a line about that man looks like he's hurt, something like that, looking down on him, not being particularly helpful as he's in his own world. The first man to touch me dies.
Yes, that was good.
Help. And just Bullock is not being allowed to go up and deal with the Hearst situation.
You know, it does bring Al and Cy back to their mirror counterparts, though, because they were both gravely injured by someone who they let their guard down around.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Do you I mean, one of the reasons I also like Hearst is that Hearst is the first in a couple seasons of the show that he feels like he's an actual threat and match for Al in this case. Prior to that, I always thought that, Al could kind of outsmart Cy, and there was not the show literally had to give him like kidney stones to bedrid him so that he couldn't solve the mystery of the second season with the Shaggy crew or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I do feel that it's nice to have an equal, both physical and intellectual threat against Al, which is necessary at a certain point in the show. The other cruel thing that happens is that we talked about reversions or like characters going back to earlier selves in the first episode of this season. Alma is an interesting case here. Alma does what she did before, which is to go back into these kind of bratty rich girl thing and to say that I want this and I'm going to have it no matter what happens.
Yeah, I was I was trying to make sure I was tracking what was going on correctly.
Yep.
Ellsworth is surprised and or put off by the fact that she names Bullock as Sophia's guardian if Alma happens to die.
Yes.
And that he would also be in charge of the gold claim?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So Ellsworth is obviously upset by that, even though their wedding is kind of a sham wedding that's being done for financial reasons. But it's like Ellsworth is obviously hurt by what Alma does, which is the point of that scene, which is that it's another one of like, I think it was the second season when Alma tells Trixie like to leave or whatever, and Trixie's like, "You dumb cunt, I can't leave." That kind of is that kind of a thing. So Alma is doing what she wants to do for herself, which is this selfish need or the selfish belief that like she still can kind of almost be with Seth in this way. If she dies, she gets to pass off the responsibilities that she has to Seth. And it's very upsetting to Ellsworth, as you would expect. And it's kind of befuddling to Bullock, who has to go and do this and talk to people. And it's also, this rewatch has just shown me like the tragedy of Martha Bullock, who is probably the nicest person in the fucking town, who gets constantly embarrassed by Alma Garrett and Seth Bullock and everyone else involved in their story.
Well, it's equally as rough here because clearly they're showing you that Seth and Martha are warming up to each other.
Yeah, they're touching each other. Yeah,
and getting kind of flirty and stuff.
Yep.
And so then to at that point have Alma essentially throw a rope around Seth is very, man. Alma is she's a great character, but man, she sucks.
Yeah, she
the way in which she sucks is so well constructed. And well conceived, making her this, person who puts on these airs of respectability, but is basically just a selfish person. I think she's a great character.
Yeah, and I think that the show does a great job of balancing her selfishness against the restrictions of her era, right? Which is that she's never actually been allowed to do what she wants to do. So the gold mine is the first. Like she got married to Brom as a business arrangement to clear her father's debts, which she didn't want. She comes out here to Deadwood. She doesn't want to do that. She gets the mine, which is her first sort of sense of like, I have agency and control over myself. But then she loses Bullock because Bullock is already betrothed to Martha, and so she loses that. But it's her selfishness is, gross in how harmful it is to someone like Ellsworth, who's only been positive to her. But it's also kind of like understandable in that it's a woman who thinks she might die, trying to take last moment of control over her life, even though it's harmful to everybody else in the room.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the other side of the equation, right? Because she's been married out of convenience twice,
right?
And right when she thought she had what she wanted, which was Seth, that blew up, and then she ended up pregnant, had to get married for convenience again, and so she's asserting her agency in that moment, because the only reason that she did this is because she was having a baby.
Yes,
and if the baby was off the table, literally and figuratively,
yes,
and she was off the table as well, then there's no reason that she can't just reclaim the agency that she had before,
right?
Except for the fact, and the thing is that she doesn't care that reclaiming that agency causes harm to the people around her.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a weird catch-22 kind of situation for her, where it is admirable that she is being so independent given the time period, but it is also very despicable is not the word, but just it's very
like hurtful,
unfortunate,
hurtful,
that it has to hurt so many people to do it. And that she doesn't care. Like, I mean, that's the thing that's interesting too. It's like she is more interested in, or I should say, having that agency is more important to her than whether or not she hurts somebody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because obviously she sees the relationship as different than Ellsworth. Ellsworth feels like he's kind of bought into this family unit because he fathers Sophia quite a bit. Like, they've made a point of showing that he's hanging out with Sophia a lot. And he seems to have a connection. That initial dialogue where Alma is kind of like stating her last will and testament to Trixie and Ellsworth, I really like that dialogue. It's it's bound in the double speak, the double meaning of like it was property before our nuptials is what they keep talking about, and he's like, I fucking know what it is. I like the wordplay that they do with that scene. Although Martha's an interesting character because she's pretty low key, and this rewatch where I'm sort of critically watching it, she is doing a lot without actually doing anything, which is a really tough actor spot to be in, because I think if you're not paying attention, Martha can kind of come across as a character who's just kind of there and is preventing Seth and Alma from being together, right? And isn't doing much outside of that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But she's
that's the Breaking Bad Anna Gunn effect.
Yeah, I guess they are kind of similar in that way. Breaking Bad is even less subtle in what she's going through, I suppose. But Deadwood is so if people aren't picking up what's going on in Breaking Bad, I guess it's obviously more missable here, as I was kind of missing it the first time as what was going on. But it's like she has that night scene where she invites Jane to speak to the kids, and when Jane leaves, she says that Sophia and Martha are both very brave women. And it just ties into that, like, she's an interesting foil to Alma, because Martha is also not given what she wants, but she makes the best of her situation each time.
Right. And she's pretty selfless about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I like her a lot. It's funny you said she looks like she's the one preventing them from being together, and I'm like, I don't want them to be together.
Right? Yeah.
I don't want. I want Seth
couple
to take care of his fucking family. Is what I want him to do. I don't want him leaving them or leaving her to go run off with Alma.
It's like Swearingen at the end of the last season, where he's like, "Take a right," and then he walks off. And
exactly.
Goes on.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think I'm picking up on Martha's thing more this watch through. I think she's a good character who I like the flirty scene with the tea. I think the dialogue and the performances between those two are great. He's like, I like my tea quite strong.
That was some real
relationship
British romance novel writing, where it's like the conversation is about the strength of the tea, but the subtext is like
the boiling kettle,
turn of the screw level repressed sexuality.
I like the true to form thing of just like, it just struck me as a sort of conversation where there's like, I feel like it's a no-win situation for you as someone who makes the tea for you. If you go like, this is too weak, they'll be like, well, do you have to be such a dick? I made you the tea. Right. But if you don't say it outright, they're like, you could just tell me that the tea is too weak and I'll go make another pot. It's like, well, I don't feel like I can win.
Right. Yeah. The never-ending struggle of
tea strength.
How to tell someone you don't like what they're doing.
That's sorry.
And it's not even that, like, that's the thing, right? He's not saying that he thinks what she's doing is bad.
No, it's
just that
trying to be tactful. Trying to bring it up in the.
But did he ever ask her what level she likes the tea to be? I don't think so.
No. Maybe
she made it the way she likes it.
Probably. She doesn't like that fruity tea. That's what Alma likes. Don't talk to him about fruity tea. Anyone else? Richardson and Farnham are very funny. I like all the Farnham scenes are funny. We talked about the first one where he asks if he was woman born or egg hatched or whatever.
That was really good.
And then the second one is also very funny, where Richardson's looking out the peephole. He says, "Uh-oh," and Farnham's like, "Why? Uh-oh? Tell me what? Uh-oh." Very funny scenes between those two.
Yeah, those two guys are I kind of feel like pairing them together is a great move, but it's also a terrible move because it allows them to relegate him to this sort of, like you were saying, like Shakespearean, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type role.
Yeah, he's like a character who's commenting on and like spying on the situation as opposed to being part of it.
Which I like, but I think I liked him more when he was actively involved.
Yeah, they took the hotel away from him is the problem. Yeah.
But at the same time, like I do like the idea that he's now this like ghost.
Yes, right. Yeah, right.
That just, and like you said, he's living in the walls of the hotel because it's the only thing that he really had going for himself.
Right. Yeah.
But I do like it more when he's actively involved and not just kind of viewing things from the sidelines.
Yeah, I would largely agree. It's the difficulty with it is that the Richardson and Farnham scenes are like just gold with each other. They're just so funny to each other. That it's hard to say it was a misstep as much as it does. And it's what you're saying. Like the symbolism of it is good. I think. Like I like this of what Farnham has become ever since he sold the hotel. But it is you're no longer having funny scenes with Farnham talking to Swearingen or just going over and like talking to different people. He's really just relegated to talk to one person.
Yeah. I was. I think one of the things that I don't know if disappointed is the word because there's so much going on in the show, but I feel like there could have been a lot to do if they actually did show Farnham doing mayor stuff, which they never did. Like it was obviously just a title.
Yes,
but
which he plays up as his characterization.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know how the elections shake out. But if he wins re-election, I think there's plenty of stuff they could mine where it's like, okay, you're the mayor of a real town now. Like this is really, you got to learn how to do this.
Yeah. I think the real history is that Farnham was the mayor of Deadwood.
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah. I obviously don't know how much he's based on what the actual person was like. I assume not much at all. But I have to bring up Doc and Trixie yelling at each other again because it's so fucking funny. I'll probably put the clip in twice, I would assume.
I was very confused when they were setting up the room with the mirrors and stuff.
Yeah, to get the
like
lights.
What the hell was going on?
Yeah, to get the lights because they're going to be out of sunlight relatively quickly. I think that this one ends. It's what I love about the show. It's this vignettiness of. I think there's some great ending scenes between the characters. I love Charlie and Joni talking to each other about how Joni is like Wild Bill and that she doesn't doesn't see what Joni and Wild Bill see themselves as less than what everyone else seems to think that they are, and that no one else gets to see it. Charlie has a lot of great scenes. If you were to do a morality power rankings or something, like Martha Bullock is fairly high on it, Charlie Utter is fairly high, and I think Cochran is fairly high up on that. But they, because Utter has the scene where he talks to Bullock too and convinces him to sort of like that the goodness of Martha and to abandon whatever dreams or desires he has with Alma, which is not going to work out for him. But
I found it interesting because they tell you when you're writing a scene, every scene should be important and there should be a clear change in, if it starts high, you end low, that kind of thing. Or
something has to happen.
Yeah, something has to happen. Something move the plot along. And I was very tickled at the breakfast scene with Hearst and Seth and Charlie.
Yeah.
Because they sit down and it looks like it's going to be some sort of like dialogue discussion scene with Seth and Charlie, and then about 30 seconds later Ellsworth comes in. He's like, Alma needs to see you, my wife needs to see you.
Yep.
And then Seth just leaves, and then it's just Charlie and Hearst looking at each other from across the room, and Hearst being like, it's hot.
Yeah, he says it's hot.
And that was the whole scene.
To where his man's throat cut, he picks the fucking fish.
Why do you think the men were his?
My wife would like to see you.
Kind of warm.
I liked it. I mean, it's worth it for the line about eating the fish. But like there was nothing else in there that was important.
No, it feels like a filler connector scene that they wrote on the spot to like accommodate the scenes of like where characters needed to move to and stuff like that, because it didn't really have a purpose. The major purpose I see of it, outside of just getting the plot pieces in a line, is to show that Hearst is indifferent to sacrificing his henchmen there, because that's the point of Charlie's line, is that he can have his guys killed and he just decides to eat at the restaurant after that. Your favorite character, Rutherford, who is the Ted Mann character, is in this one. He has a funny line where the guy accuses him that he was the kind of man who grew up like setting kittens on fire and tying cans to dogs' tails, and he says, overturning turtles was my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And who didn't overturn turtles as a kid? It's just too funny.
I don't think I ever
found a turtle.
Encountered a turtle.
Oh, well, you're in the wrong place, wrong time. But Rutherford continues to be a very funny character. And for some reason,
horseshoe crabs where you grew up?
No.
Those were the weirdest things I think that I would encounter in the wild around me, because we lived right off of a marsh. And you would just be like walking through the marsh, and there'd be these like, I don't know if I ever encountered a live one.
Okay.
But they're like skeletons. Their exoskeletons were all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And in retrospect, I don't know why I didn't find it weirder, because they are fucking weird looking. They're
ancient.
There's like these, they look like horseshoes.
Yes.
Like the actual feet of a horse.
Yes.
Not that, just the shoe part. And then they got this like long spiky tail that comes out of the back of it. I don't know what they do. I don't know what they're for.
And they have blue blood,
I don't know what purpose they serve. Do they?
Yeah, I think that's
even weirder.
I think that's one of the famous facts about them. They have blue blood. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Spoo.
Just everywhere.
They're just everywhere. Yeah, they wash up on the beaches every once in a while with a jellyfish stuck to its tail or something like that.
Ugh.
And then I just have my final joke line that you had referenced earlier, the side scene. Is Tolliver says, "Get on your motherfucking knees, Leon."
So good. Like that scene, I thought that scene was so perfectly balanced between being funny and being tense and being scary.
Yeah, because you think it's real at first, right? With the performance. So that's the way I always take it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know I've seen Cy get like that before when there's a gun involved, and it ended with Kristen Stewart getting a bullet in the head.
Yep.
And so like seeing him going crazy, whipping out this gun, but he's like proselytizing, and so I don't know what he's gonna do. I kept expecting him to just like, focus up and shoot him. Like it was a very tense scene, and then with Leon comes in and fucks it up. And then the next guy comes in and fucks it up. I just thought it was great. It was because it showed it showed that size thing is so much like an act.
Yeah, very performative.
Very performative. And so when his rhythm gets screwed up, he's just like
Powers Booth gives a great facial reaction to when Leon comes in too. He's so like disappointed that he's coming at the wrong time, and Leon just comes in and says like, I was told that this is when you wanted me to come in, Mr. Tolliver, or whatever he says, but exposes his hand.
Horseshoe crab blood is blue.
Yep.
And they use it for medicine.
Yeah, there's something special. Does it say what's special about it? There's something unique about it. Is it like type O blood or something, like when you use it in transfusions or something like that? Is it very similar to human blood? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
What are we looking for here? Medicine.
And outside of that, I don't think I have anything else about this one. Labor without pleasure makes us our destiny's slaves. To work for crumbs or to keep the lash, says maybe a slave's what you are.
It's their blood can be manufactured into limulus ambiosite lysate that is used to detect pathogens and indispensable medicines such as injectable antibiotics.
Oh, okay. So they're like a testing solution, basically. Interesting.
That's crazy. What a weird fucking animal.
The blue bloods.
The richest animal in the sea.
That's what they are. So that was I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For. Did you have any other thoughts about this one, Clay, or any scenes that we missed? You get to see Jane Cannery's bosoms in this episode for the first time, I believe, which is a memorable thing. I like Mose and her having conversations. They're very funny at this point.
Yeah. I really like. She's a great character because like I don't even like really need a storyline from her.
Yes,
I think she's good enough, and the situations that they put her in are interesting enough for her personally and her whole attitude towards like just like existing.
Yeah,
that if they don't ever do anything that really moves her forward, it won't bother me that much because I find her so fun.
Yeah, her arc at this point is all personal development of just trying to find her way through this life. So that's it. I Am Not the Fine Man You Take Me For. It was the second episode of this third season of Deadwood. Things are chugging along. Thank you very much for listening. If you guys enjoyed the content today, patreon.com/The Penske File is the best way to support the show. Let us know what you're thinking about Deadwood by joining our Discord. There's all these links down in the podcast blurbs down below. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
I'm entranced by this video of how they extract horseshoe crab blood. It's very strange. It's very, very sci-fi looking. Check out Rotten Horror Picture Show on Patreon. We're doing video nasties this year. We just finished Bay of Blood, and we're going to do Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. On our regular show, we either are about to or have just, depending when this comes out, done Sleepaway Camp, which I'm excited about because Amanda has never seen Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah.
And as far as I can tell, have you ever seen Sleepaway Camp?
That's the notoriously bad one with the campers, right? That has like the Baldies line.
Yeah, and it's got a very, very famous ending.
Yes. It's very much like another famous movie that has an ending like that.
Yes. And as far as I know, she has no idea about anything in this movie. So I'm very excited for her to watch it.
Yeah, that's what sorry, I blanked out. What part is that? Is this a video nasty?
This is for the regular show. It's the my wild card pick.
Oh, okay. I was like, how the hell did that make the top two? Okay, your wild card pick makes a little bit more sense. There you go.
Yeah. Just because I figured we had done Friday the 13th on Patreon. Then we had just done Bay of Blood, which is another like sort of on the water movie, and we had done The Burning, which is a campground movie. So all the Patreon people are getting the summer camp movies. So I figured we'll do a famous one for a wild card in the main feed.
Good, sounds good.
And I think I'm going to put my finger on the scale, and I think we're going to do The Exorcist after that, just because
bounce it out
William.
there.
Well, no, because the director just passed away, so it'll be an excuse to talk about it.
That's right, he did. Oh, goddamn. See, if I had a better mind, the Rutherford has a great line about scales of justice. Why is justice blind? Because she can't see how you're tipping the scales or something. He has some line like that. Oh, I wish I had a better memory for these things. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the show. Thank you for listening to our coverage of I'm Not the Fine Man You Take Me For. I forget what the next episode is called, and I don't have the book in front of me, so I can't figure it out. But I will let you know. We'll be here next week with that episode. So, see ya.
Could you have been born, Richardson, and not egg-hatched as I've always assumed? Did your mother hover over you, snaggle-toothed and doting as you now hover over me?
I loved my mother.
Puberty may bring you to understand what we take for mother love is really murderous hatred and a desire for revenge.
Will you give your speech to be mayor tonight?
Whatever night I give it, count on me not to mince words. Electors of the camp, as to who should serve as mayor, reasonable men may differ, but as to who should be sheriff, we all ought to speak with one voice, and our words should be, turn out the maniac Bullock, who set upon the mayor unprovoked, who beat him with merciless protraction. Bullock should be murdered. We should rise up and murder Bullock. Thank you very much.
My father didn't like me.
I'd like to use your ointment to suffocate you.